this tutorial you will need your selected yarns. I'm using MillaMia Naturally Soft Aran. This is the colour Stone and this is the colour Ice. I'm going to use two colours for this demonstration to keep it nice and simple, so you can select your two colours. You will need your corresponding crochet hook. I'm going to use a 5.5mm with this yarn. You will need a pair of scissors and a darning needle for sewing in your ends. I will leave a link in the description box below for you where you can find all the information that you need. All you need to do is take a look under this video and click show more, or the downward arrow if you're on a mobile device. Scroll down and you'll find the link to the blog post. On that blog post is also the free download for the chart, which I'm going to be using today, and also the pinnable image if you want to pin this project for later. As always, don't forget to like and comment, subscribe and click that bell button to be notified of any new videos. First of all, we're going to get started with having a look at the chart, and then we'll actually get started with creating the pattern itself. Okay, so remember you can find this chart on the blog post. I have it on my iPad right now because I'm having printer issues, but if you want to print it off or have it somewhere so that you can see it, that would be ideal. So I'm going to talk you through how to read this chart first before we actually move on to the pattern itself, because it can be a little bit scary when you look at it, but when you break it down, it's actually pretty simple to use. So just as a reminder, this is the overlay mosaic technique. So what we want to do here is just look at the basic principles of the chart. So if I just enlarge here so that you can see a little bit more, you can see that we have the rose and the colour down the side here, and then we also have the rose and the colour down the opposite side. That's just how I like to see mine. You might only find that on other charts it's just on one side or the other. Each chart can be slightly different, but the basic principles are the same. We then have the colours down the side here. So this is just a two colour demonstration just to get you started with the basics. So row 1 is colour A, row 2 is colour B, etc. That will make more sense in just a moment. We then have a border stitch on each side. So your final piece is going to have a border. The first stitch and the last stitch of the row will have a double crochet. Remember, this is UK terms, so that'll be single crochet in the US. So each of these lines is representing a row, because with overlay mosaic crochet, we work row by row. We work from the bottom to the top as we do with all crochet, and also we work from right to left. Obviously if you're watching this left-handed, then you're going to work left to right, but that's the basic principles of this section here. We then have the key at the bottom, so it's telling you here that the white space is a double crochet worked into the back loop only using colour A, and then the grey space is double crochet in the back loop only using colour B, and then the white box or the grey box with the X in it, you might see this with a circle in it. It depends on what your key is, but this is how I like to do it. You've got the treble crochet into the front loop only, 2 rows below using colour A or colour B. This will obviously make more sense once we actually get started with the pattern itself. So if we take a look at the actual pattern here, I'm going to grab my pencil. We've got a couple of foundation rows. So we have a foundation row here, which is using colour A, and then we have a foundation row here, which is using colour B. I know that it has a different colour every so often in this space, but this is actually determined by the drop down treble crochet that we're going to be doing just here. Again, this will all make sense once we actually start the project. I just want to point out here that we have a pattern repeat. So this section is indicating the pattern repeat, and I've repeated it twice so that you can see what the pattern really starts to look like. And then it also says down here that this pattern is worked in multiples of 10 plus 3. So that means that you can work in multiples of 10 for your chain, plus an additional 3 for turning if you want to make this project bigger. For today, we're going to just do this sample size, just because the aim is to try and get you used to the methods of working mosaic crochet. Okay, so that is the basic principles of the table or of the chart. I will keep referring back to this, but if you can have it handy, that would be brilliant. What I'm going to do is actually insert onto the screen as I'm working, so that I can show you where or what we're working, and hopefully as we're working along it will start to make a bit more sense to you. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and grab my colour A and get started. Okay, so we're going to begin by creating a slip knot. You can do this in whichever method you prefer. Go ahead and insert your crochet hook. You want to leave a longer tail end, and I'll talk about tail ends in just a moment. But if you look at your chart, this chart is in multiples of 10 plus 3. I have done 2 multiples of 10, so I'll do 20 plus 3, so I'll do 23 in total. I would suggest that you do this size just as a practice piece, and then once you're more confident you can go ahead and increase the size. So for the first row, row 1 is going to be double crochet, but first of all we want to make our foundation chain. So as I say, that's in multiples of 10 plus 1. So it's yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through, that's 2, 3, 4, 5. Go ahead, pause the video, chain 23, and then meet me back in just a moment. Okay, so I have completed my chain of 23, and now what we're going to do is work our row 1. So our row 1 is going to be all double crochets, which is a UK term. In the US this is known as a single crochet. We're going to start off in the second chain from the hook, so not the one that's on the hook. We have 1 and 2. Now, to get a neater finish, you would actually work into the back bumps of your chain. So if you turn the chain, you see these back bumps here. However, just for simplicity, or if you're just starting out, we're just going to work into the top chain. So we have our chain on the hook, we have 1 and 2. We'll work into there, yarn over and pull through. You'll have 2 loops on the hook, yarn over, pull through both loops on the hook. So that's 1. Into the next chain, double crochet, insert, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through 2. So that's 2 double crochets that we've worked. 3, 4 and 5. You're going to pause the video, work your way all the way along. You will end up with 22 double crochets in your chain, because one of them was a turning chain, which we don't count. So go ahead, pause the video, work those 22 double crochets, and then meet me back once you're ready. Okay, so once you've come to the end of the row, we are actually going to fasten off. So again, leaving a longish tail end. Now the reason for that is to give you options. So you can either use your tail ends and you can turn them into tassels. You can crochet them in as you go along, which is a little bit more of an advanced technique. I would probably say to, well, I'm going to demonstrate just leaving them out for this project, just because I'd rather you concentrate on the actual technique. And then I'll do some videos later on down the line of what you can do with these. But you can leave them as tassels, you can crochet them in as you go along, or you can crochet them in with a border, because we are going to end up with a lot of tail ends. So now that we've done row 1, we are actually going to again work our next row, and we're going to start from right to left again, or left to right if you're watching the left-handed version. So we want to take our second colour. You're going to create your slip knot, leaving a longish tail end, and then we're going to find our first stitch. So we're going to insert our hook into the top of that first stitch and then slip stitch it on. We're going to chain up 1, and then we're going to start with our first stitch. So for row 2 we have our border stitch to begin with, 10 stitches, which is the pattern repeat, which we'll do twice, so 20, and then another border stitch. There are no X's along that row, which means that all of the stitches are going to be double crochet. We don't change colours. So even though there are a few white boxes on that chart or on that row, we do not change colours at this point because that is actually from the next row. So we're going to double crochet into that first stitch, and you're going to double crochet into the whole of the stitch here on that border stitch, and that just gives that first stitch a little bit of stability. Now for the rest of the row, apart from the last stitch, we're only going to work into the back loop only. So go into the back loop and do your double crochet, into the next back loop and double crochet, and you're going to do this all the way along until you get to your last stitch where you will do a full stitch. So remember, whenever you do your border stitches at the beginning or end of the row, they are always into the full stitch, into the front and back loop, but as you are working your row, you are only working into the back loop only. So go ahead, work your way across. You will still have the same amount of stitches, so 22 stitches, and then meet me back once you've got to the end of your row. Okay, so I am just going to do my very last stitch. This is the border stitch, so just a reminder, we go into the whole of the stitch and then we're going to fasten off. And there is our row 2. So we're going to grab colour A again and make our slip knot, and then we'll attach and work on row 3. Okay, so here we go for row 3. I have colour A on a slip knot. I'm going to insert my hook into that first stitch, slip stitch that on and chain up 1. And then we're going to do our double crochet into that very first stitch for our border stitch. So that is our very first stitch. Now this is where the pattern really starts to come into its own. So that very first stitch on row 3 after the border stitch, if you have a look at your charts, you can see that that first stitch is a white box with an X in it. And this means that we're going to do a treble crochet, which is a double crochet in the US, into the front loop only of 2 rows below. So this is our previous row, and then this is the row below. Now you can see here, this is the front loop of that stitch. So what we want to do is yarn over, use your hook, turn it upside down and pick up that front loop. It's probably the easiest way to do it. So you pick up that front loop and go underneath, and then yarn over and pull through. You'll have 3 loops on the hook, yarn over, pull through 2. You'll have 2 loops on the hook and then yarn over, pull through 2. And we can see that that has brought that stitch down and over the row below. So as you look at your chart, and you know I mentioned on row 2 how some of the boxes were white, that is because this stitch is coming down over that row and it's demonstrating that pattern to you. So that is your drop down treble crochet, working into the front loop 2 rows below. So because we've done our treble crochet in that stitch, we missed this stitch, and now we're going to work 1, 2, if we have a look at a chart, 1, 2, 3, 4 double crochets, back loop only double crochets, before we do another one of those stitches. So as I say, we missed this stitch because that is the treble that we've just created. Work into the back loop only of the next 4 stitches, 1, 2, 3 and 4, and now we're going to do another drop down treble crochet, is what I call it. So we are going to yarn over, find that stitch 2 rows below, pick up the front loop, yarn over, pull through, 3 loops on the hook, yarn over, pull through 2, and yarn over, pull through 2, and there we have that next stitch. We're then going to skip that stitch which sits behind it and then do 4 back loop only double crochets, 1, 2, 3 and 4. So that section that we've just done actually completes that pattern repeat. So we start it again, or you can just follow your chart. So the next stitch is the drop down treble, so into that front loop from 2 rows below, treble, miss that stitch that we've just worked over, and then do 4 double crochets, 1, 2, 3 and 4. If we have a look at our chart, we're going to do that once more. So drop down treble, front loop only of 2 rows below, and then miss that treble stitch that we've worked over, 1, 2, 3 and 4. We should have 1 stitch left over, which we do just here, and we're going to do a full double crochet working into that stitch. You might just need to be slightly looser with your beginning and end stitches, just so it doesn't drag down the beginning and end of the row too much, because we're working into the full stitch and not just the back loops. So we're going to snip off our yarn, and then you can see here what I mean about those tail ends. You're going to have a lot of tail ends, but there are things that we can do if that does fill you with dread. And then we're going to go ahead, get our colour B on a slip knot, and then we're going to reattach to this side. So go ahead, grab your colour B, and then we'll move on to row 4. Okay, so we're going to attach colour B into this very first stitch. Now again, there are more advanced things that you can do here with your stitches to make things look a bit tidier. Some people don't do a chain 1, but we really are just focusing on the actual general technique for this pattern first of all. Okay, so now we're going to do row 4. If we have a look at the row, yes, we have some white boxes, but we're only concentrating on the X's in this row. So for row 4, it's using colour B all the way across. We've done our double crochet into the full stitch, which is our border stitch. Then we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 boxes before we get to an X. So that means we're working into the back loop only of the next 4 stitches, doing a double crochet. That's 1, 2, 3 and 4. And then we have another one of these drop down treble crochets. So we're working 2 rows below, so this time we're picking up this colour B front loop. So it's yarn over, remember pick it up with your hook like this, it's much easier. Yarn over, pull through, you'll have 3 loops on the hook, yarn over, pull through 2, and yarn over, pull through 2. So we've made that stitch there. We ignore the stitch that it's laying across, so we miss that stitch, and then we're going to do 4 double crochets, 1, 2, 3 and 4. We will then get to the drop down treble crochet again, so yarn over, 2 rows below, scoop it up. It's easier to find this time because we already have this stitch that we made in the previous row and we're just working one stitch prior. So there we have, we skip that stitch and work 4 double crochets. 1, 2, 3 and 4. Drop down double crochet, yarn over, scoop up that front loop, yarn over, pull through 2 and pull through 2, skip a stitch, back loop only, 1, 2, 3 and 4. We're then going to do one more drop down treble because this is part of the pattern, and then our final stitch is our border stitch, which we are going to do the double crochet into the front and back loop. Chain 1 or yarn over, pull through should I say, to tie off. And that is the end of our row 4. So you can really start to see this coming through now, this pattern. We have our drop down trebles, and if you compare this to your chart, you can see here why row 2 has those colours throughout, because the stitch above is the drop down treble. So it's a really fascinating pattern to see starting to emerge. We're going to move on to row 5. I'll go through that with you. So you want to grab your colour A and create your slip knot and then join, and then we'll go ahead and work that row. Okay, so for row 5, as the chart says, we're using colour A. We'll start off with our border stitch, which is double crochet into that first stitch. I've already done my chain 1, and then we have 1, 2, 3 back loop only double crochets until we do our next stitch. So we'll go 1 into the back loop only, 2 and 3, and now we have that drop down treble. So it's yarn over, we'll find that front post only from 2 rows below and then complete our treble. Skip that stitch that we've worked over, and then we have 4 double crochets. 1, 2, 3 and 4, and then we do that drop down treble into the front loop only, 2 rows below, miss that stitch that we've worked over, and then work the 4 trebles. 1, 2, 3 and 4. So we've just done that pattern repeat. The only thing that you need to consider is how your rows are ending. So if we have a look at the chart this time, we have 1 drop down treble on the second to last stitch and then the border stitch. So because of the way the pattern goes, it will just switch it up slightly at the beginning and at the end of the rows, but the general principle is exactly the same. So we're just working those drop down stitches, skipping over that stitch and working 1, 2, 3 and 4. This pattern that we're doing here is probably one of the most basic ones for MOSAIC crochet, but I felt like it was one of the best ones to start with to get the general principle. So we'll skip over, we'll do that last double crochet in the back loop only, and then we have our border stitch left. So we'll go ahead, work into the whole of the stitch, and then fasten off that row. So there we go. So I'm going to go through one more row with you, row 6. So go ahead and get colour B on a slip knot, attach, and then we'll move on to row 6. Okay, so here we are for row 6. Now if you've printed off your free printable, which you can find on my website, what you can actually do is use a ruler to keep note of your row, because it can be a little bit tricky once you start getting further into the chart. So that's just a little tip for you. But we're going to move on for row 6, which is using colour B. I've done my chain 1, and then I'm going to do my double crochet to start that row. Remember not to make that double crochet too tight. So we're going to start off with 2 back loop only double crochets, 1 and 2, and then we get to our box with the X in, so we're going to do that drop down treble crochet. Yarn over, find the front loop only of 2 stitches below and complete your treble crochet. Skip that stitch that you've worked over, and then we'll do 4 double crochets into the back loop only. So it's 2, 3 and 4, drop down treble crochet, skip that stitch that we've worked over, 4 back loop only double crochets, 2, 3 and 4, drop down treble, working over that stitch, 1, 2, 3 and 4, drop down treble, and then at the end of this row we have 2 back loop only double crochets, so we'll skip this stitch, 1 and 2, and then finally we have that border stitch which we work into the whole of the stitch before fastening off. Okay, so hopefully the principles of this stitch are really coming through now and you're starting to get to grips with it. I'm going to finish off this sample piece by doing my rows 7 to 11, and then I'll meet you back in just a moment. So this is my completed swatch. This is from the front, which looks amazing, and then from the back it will always look striped like this. So I think it makes a really nice blanket and things because it is almost reversible. Even though this is striped, it still looks really pretty, and it just looks so effective, doesn't it? Once you get the hang of this, then and reading the charts, it's really simple to be able to read different designs and experiment with different looks with this MOSAIC crochet. So I really hope that you have enjoyed having a play with it. Obviously, if you wanted to adapt this, you could add some like different colours. Lots of people use like a neutral colour and then a colour change, like a variegated yarn, either like an ombre effect, so it actually changes colour as you're working up, which is really nice and effective. Some people use scrap yarns and just alternate the colour within it so that it looks nice and different, but it's totally up to you. Have a play around with it. I highly recommend just doing some sample swatches like this so you can really get to grips with the actual technique and how to do it, but it's just really fun to do and totally addictive. Keep an eye out for all of the other videos in this series. I'll leave a link in the description box below so that you can go and check them out. So yeah, I really hope that you have enjoyed this tutorial. Make sure that you give me a thumbs up and leave me a comment in the comment section below, because I love to see your comments. Also, don't forget to subscribe and click that bell button and tag me on your makes on Coco Crochet so that I can see the types of things you're getting up to. Thanks for watching. Bye.